It was a sunny day when we walked into the Sheep's Head Inn pub. I remember because once you walk inside, the sun quickly disappears and you're met with cool temperatures, the natural light held at bay. The light that did make it in was absorbed by the wooden interior. My friend Sheila and I sat at the bar for a drink and began chatting with the bartender, a strawberry blonde woman called Sinead. Sheila seemed to know her, and away they went talking about this person and that person. But soon, I became the topic of conversation. "Hold on a minute," Sinead said, and pulled her iPad out from underneath the bar. She stared at the screen for a couple minutes. I wondered what she was doing and pulled a sip from my Murphy's. Murphy's, the official stout of Cork County, began as an operation started by 4 brothers back in 1854. Once a true competitor to Guinness, they went bankrupt in 1982 and were taken over by Heineken. Still, it's good to order a Murphy's when you're in the county. "Here it is," Sinead said, breaking me out of my reverie. And there, in the dimly lit Sheep's Head Inn pub, which is no longer open, Sinead pulled up a video of me singing. I couldn't believe it. "Yeah, someone sent this to me a few Sundays ago. They were at a gig you did with Kenny Dredd and Skull and were like, 'You must check out this new singer. Come to the pub,'" Sinead recalled. Skull is about 17 kilometers from Durrus, with plenty of fresh air in between the villages. But still, small is small in Ireland, and Small was having a video of my singing shared with me weeks after I sang, sent by someone I didn't know to someone else I didn't know. I remember being struck by the kindness of it, and aware that it was likely true that this kindness could work the other way around, stories being spread about unpleasant moments just as easily. But I was new to Small, new to being known, seen, watched, wondered about, and judged on the level of small Irish village small. So I smiled. How cool, I thought. How truly lovely. And it was. As the years passed, I would come to discover many of the levels of smallness in West Cork. Some of my friends struggled with it. They longed for anonymity and fewer questions about their life choices or creative projects. Everyone seemed to have something to say, and they didn't always say it to your face. In my experience, the Irish are naturally curious people. I remember I had the loveliest conversation with a fisherman at the Baltimore Harbor on my first trip to Ireland. He asked me 101 questions about myself, my life, and what brought me to his shores. As we spoke, he reflected my choices back to me and encouraged me on my journey. He was present with me. I think that's what stood out. You could tell he was taking in the information I was sharing and letting it run through his own heart and mind to see what it struck inside. That is the beautiful side. The other side? Gossip. You can feel when it's gossip time. I distinctly remember running into an older generation Irish woman that I knew locally. She asked me a series of rapid-fire questions, staring at me intently, closing the gap of space between us with alarming speed and literally noodling the information out of me and into her brain for social currency, should she need it as she navigated her day. But it wasn't just the women. Oh, no. The men were equal in their ability to retain intense detail about the people in their lives. I'll never forget the moment it struck me. I was headed out hiking with a male friend of mine and a few of his mates. As we drove to Killarney to get to the trailhead, these grown men erupted like a flock of hens. I can't remember the personal details they shared about the people in their circles, but I do remember being astounded by the stories they wove. The thought of keeping that much intimate information in my head about other people's lives made my brain want to break. Yes, these men could gossip as well as any woman. As the years passed, my impression of the Irish began to change, and I'd laugh as my Retreat to Ireland participants would come to me after an encounter with an Irish person. They'd always say the same kind of thing. "Wow, they were so nice and so curious." Curious or potentially just plain nosy? I now understand that it's normal for people of any gender orientation in West Cork to talk to someone about someone else, exchanging information along with their own thoughts and feelings about the person or their situation. I found this disconcerting after a while, and it's one of the reasons I eventually moved. But I let my retreat participants enjoy the cultural experience without my more seasoned take on the social dynamics of small. I did draw the line with Peter, though. Peter was trying to get in touch with a friend of mine, and my friend hadn't been responding. Let me be clear, I didn't know this man. I'd only heard stories here or there. I'd never met him before, and to be honest, I don't know how he knew who I was. But when we ran into each other, he confirmed my identity and began asking how my friend was doing. A cascade of leading questions followed that made me feel uneasy. I could tell he was trying to figure something out through me, and it made my skin start to crawl. I stopped him and brought out the 35 years of living in the United States that lived inside of me. Sounds like you should get in touch with him directly. Now it was Peter's turn to squirm. I remember leaving that social interaction a mix of upset, confused, and annoyed. This happened more times than I can count with my own hands, with other people and in other situations. After round 29 of Irish Small versus Cat Cook, I finally had to have that come to Jesus conversation with myself. It went something like this. Cat, look it, this is West Cork. This is what happens here. People talk about each other all the time. You literally cannot get away from it. It's embedded in the culture, has its positive sides, but if it really feels as yucky as you're sensing, then I think you should seriously consider relocating. As they say in South Africa, yesus. Yesus is another form of taking the Lord's name in vain. It comes out of people's mouths as an exclamation when something challenging is afoot. It's a relief to make that kind of sound instead of internalizing something that just shouldn't be. Then there's this kind of small. The kind of small where you Kaylee dance with your immigration officer. The kind of small where, even though you'd finally moved away and were just back for a visit, the postman, who knows you left, asks you how long you're home for. It's the kind of small where, when your tire is flat and you don't have the tools you need, 5 different people help you and someone runs home to get the right tire iron. And it's the kind of small where, when you hitchhike, people you know pick you up because they care. It's still the kind of culture that thinks nothing of dropping by someone's home for a cup of tea unannounced. I personally love this ritual. I once tried it when I was back in the States. I was in my friend Rachel's neighborhood in Seattle, so I drove to her apartment and rang her buzzer. She answered tentatively. "Hey, Rachel, I was in the neighborhood, so I thought I'd drop by." "Kat?" she inquired. "Is that you?" And while she let me in, she later requested I call her first if I was in the neighborhood again. Apparently, sometimes small doesn't work in big cities. I once asked a friend of mine how she dealt with the smallness. How did she handle all the stories and gossip, and how sometimes you could get to know someone through stories told about them by lots of different people without ever having met them? Her reply was simple. You must decide for yourself what you think and how you feel, and know that others will feel differently. I paused. That made sense. It also struck me. She was basically describing a level of tolerance to the polarity and tension of life. You make up your own mind and hold it within the greater context. From this place, a good deal of personal power wells up like a spring. In my experience, the Irish are very us or we-oriented. So these two things combined, being group-minded plus independent, without making the group wrong, makes for a fascinating culture to be immersed in. Sometimes when I imagine the social landscape of Ireland, it reminds me of a tangled ball of yarn, or a large group of people surrounded by fog. What's real? How does this person really feel? Is this codependency, interconnection, both? Well, it feels like rainbow weather. Beautiful, colorful, and full of illusion. One thing I sense for certain, the Irish are unique with a witty human psyche that has been shaped by ancient stories, religion, colonialism, and the never-ending rain that washes the land green through storms from the Atlantic Ocean. So is this where small comes from?